those panelists please speak by. Welcome to the Great Unleashing, and welcome to our talk, which is called Accelerating the Transition, a Youth Perspective. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at me and saying, I'm not a youth, right? And to underscore that, I got new glasses yesterday, for those who know me, and these are bifocals. They don't look like it because they haven't graduated thing going on. So 2 years ago, I realized that in order to save what I love about this planet, we would need to bring down civilization through coordinated resistance. That's a really, really radical thing to be saying. And I'm not going to defend that at all. That's the role of our speaker, Dylan. He'll be up here in a minute. The point I want to make now is that I've spent the past 2 years organizing this resistance locally in Bellingham and Whatcom County. And during those 2 years, we've tried very hard to recruit, in quotes, recruit people that are my age, that are older. And pretty much everybody involved in the effort is less than half my age. So we realized there was something going on here, and that's what we're going to be exploring today. There are 3 groups locally. One is called Fertile Ground, that's the one that I helped start. The other is called Deep Green Whatcom, that works on these issues on a local basis. Fertile Ground works on a national and international basis. And the third one is a discussion group, and it's primarily just for youth. You have to be 30 years old or under to come to the group, and it's called Against Civilization, which is based on the title of the John Jozan book called Against Civilization. The panelists that will be coming up tonight are all from that third group, Against Civilization. And the perspectives that they'll be offering today, I think, are very compelling and engaging. I think you'll enjoy them. And after they talk, we're going to have a question and answer period. First, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dylan Thompson. Want to come up? Dylan and I both serve on the Coordinating Council of Fertile Ground. He's the archivist. He is the position paper coordinator. And he is the general shit kicker. He is not only a dedicated member of Fertile Ground, but somebody that I can always count on to speak up for the species and the native places that are often forgotten in this culture. And it's been an honor to work with him for the past 2 years. I consider him a dear friend and a colleague. Here's Dylan.
Thank you all for coming. So for the past 2.5 years, a group of people have been meeting once a week to talk about issues I think we're pretty much all familiar with. Peak oil, population overshoot, species extinction, deforestation, the death of the oceans. This group was started by students up at Western Washington University, but has been welcoming people from the larger Bellingham community as long as they're under 30. These meetings are a place where confused, concerned, or disenfranchised youth can come to talk about what they know, how they feel about what they know, and what they want to do about what they know. And part of the main reason that people under 30 are the only ones invited into the group is in large part because wisdom in this culture is measured on a linear scale. And much of what young people have to say, especially when it comes to what to do about the crisis we face, is not taken seriously or is disregarded entirely. You see, in this culture, to obtain true wisdom, you have to have gotten a degree or reached a certain age. It seems the more credentials you have, the more wisdom you have. Now, I don't have a problem with wisdom being measured by experience, but I do when it's the only way that wisdom is measured. I've learned that people from many indigenous cultures view wisdom more as a spectrum rather than as a hierarchy. The wisdom held by elders is just a different kind of wisdom than that held by the children. Just as the youth have things to learn from their elders' experience, so too do the elders have things to learn from the youth's freshness, their more innocent minds. And so it's my hope for this afternoon that we can all maybe set aside that cultural norm that we've grown so used to and take what we each have to say simply for what it is. Now, I assume you're all here today to gain some tools to aid in the up-and-coming transition of Whatcom County. And we're here to give you just that. We're here to give you the tool of a broader perspective, a youth perspective, so that you might be able to better empathize with the youth in your communities. And for those of you in the audience who still consider themselves to be a part of the youth, this is just as much for you as it is for the older folk. So let's start with what we know. We know we're living in a world of converging crises. Every living system is in decline. The oceans, the forests, the prairies. Human beings, the animals that we are dependent on these systems. We are dependent on clean air, clean water, and healthy topsoil. In the long term, we cannot have healthy human children if we don't have healthy salmon children, if you don't have healthy grizzly bear children, if we don't have healthy gray wolf children, or healthy Douglas fir children. We need healthy ecosystems to survive. Today alone, more than 120 species will be driven extinct by the activities of this culture. 120 entire species. 120 species were driven extinct yesterday and the day before. 120 more will be driven extinct tomorrow and the day after that. Every stream in the United States is contaminated with carcinogens. Every stream. This is not paranoid environmentalist talk. This is the U.S. Geological Survey. As I speak, people living in the Pacific Island nations are in a state of emergency as sea level rise caused by global warming threatens to consume their homes. Within my lifetime, the North Pole will become a place in the ocean that can be traveled to by boat. How about something a little more tangible? How about dioxin, the most toxic chemical known to science, in every mother's breast milk? Meaning that we've actually been forced to feed toxins to our babies. How about the increasing rate of cancer? How about the increasing rate of depression, suicide? How about the increasing rate of incarceration? Did you know that the US has only 4% of the world's population, but over 25% of the world's incarcerated population? How about the outrageous rate of sexual assault? 25% of women in this culture are sexually assaulted within their lifetime. That's 1 out of every 4 women in this room. And another 19% have to fend off rape attempts. There's something called the democracy of fear. And that is, if you're a woman in this culture and you're walking alone at night and you hear footsteps behind you, you have a reason to be afraid. The rate of child abuse is increasing. Warfare is becoming more and more mechanized and impersonal. I just watched recent leaked footage of US soldiers in an Apache helicopter massacring 15 unarmed Iraqi civilians, like it was some video game. All a soldier has to do is press a button and 15 lives are extinguished. And let's not even talk about the potential of nuclear Armageddon. There are 27 million slaves who live in the world today. They make our shoes, they make our clothes, they make our chocolate. How about watching, day by day, as members of this culture develop, aka destroy, what remains of the wild places on this earth? I watched as the beautiful meadow across from my parents' house become a garbage heap because some people decided to pull in a mobile home and dump rusting cars all over the place. That was one of the first times growing up that I felt something was wrong with this culture. Although I couldn't articulate it, I knew something was wrong. So in our discussion group, we talk about how we've been witness to the encroachment of this culture into the few remaining wild places left on this earth. And I'm not talking just about out there. I'm talking about in here as well. We talk about the variety of ways in which this culture has synced our brains and our very beings into the machine. We We talk about how we've witnessed so many people pouring their souls into MySpace and Facebook, spending hours on their television or in front of the computer. We are different creatures now. We've been spending more time in relationship with ourselves and our own machines rather than with each other in the natural world. Most of us know how to navigate a keyboard better than we do any wild place. This makes us sick, and this makes us stupid. And it's this knowledge, combined with fierce passion and the need to do something physical, that is bursting at the seams in myself and other young people that I've worked with. And we're calling for resistance. We want to fight back. We want to organize our communities and confront power in a way that will effectively stop industrial civilization from killing the planet. Not only do we need a transition movement to ease us into as soft a landing as possible, but we need a resistance movement. Now, before we talk about resistance, I'd like to bring up a few things that come up when young people bring up resistance as a strategy. Sometimes, though very rarely, we're given a thumbs up and a go get 'em. But more often, we're laughed at or scoffed at. We receive pained looks that seem to say, your naivete is going to get someone hurt or worse. Most often, what happens is that we are criticized for being too angry, too divisive, too negative. And I can't tell you how much this frustrates us. Because yes, we are angry. We are livid at what is happening to our homes. But to think that our call for resistance is coming mostly out of a place of anger is insulting. It's insulting to our very humanity. Because we are complex creatures able to think and feel more than one thing at a time. I am full of hate and anger and joy and happiness and desperation and frustration. And I do not want to sell myself short by suppressing some of these emotions because I've been told that they are bad. I want to use everything in my human range of emotions to stop industrial civilization from killing the planet. And I have to say that most young radical activists that I've worked with, and actually most radical activists in general, we are working more from a place of love and compassion than we are from hate or anger. Prior to my neighbors pulling in that mobile home and dumping rusted cars in the meadow across my parents' house, the grass was tall and green. It was the perfect place for the herd of elk that so often came through to graze and play. I sat in the fall and watched them against the backdrop of the vibrant reds, yellows, and greens of the forested hill on the far side of the meadow. And I sat in the early morning fog, and I couldn't see them, but I could hear them calling to each other. I heard the mothers call to the children, and the children call to the mothers in a way that reminded me of whale song. And I watched mother deer and their fawns peruse the grass for tasty morsels. And I watched coyotes stalk field mice. And I watched eagles dive for their dinner. And I watched bobcats slink through the tall grass to who knows where. And I remember lying in bed with my window open during summer nights. And I would fall asleep to the eerie sound of the chorus of coyote packs, yipping, barking, and howling at some midnight ceremony. And I watched as a still-lit cigarette set that meadow ablaze and set the entire thing on fire. And I saw it turn black and char. And I watched the return of life to that meadow. I watched the return of the elk. I watched the return of the bobcats and the coyotes and the field mice. That is what I'm fighting for. That is what we're fighting for. We are fighting for the return of life to the places that have been deadened by this culture. Love and anger are not opposites. In fact, one cannot exist without the other. The opposite of love and anger is indifference. And it is this indifference, this disengagement, that is consuming so many people in this culture. So many activists, even. Another thing we talk about in our discussion group is the people that we meet that claim to be on the side of the natural world, only to criticize us for being too angry. They say, you must act only out of love and compassion. You must be love and compassion. Let the love and compassion envelop you like a cocoon, so that we may emerge as a beautiful butterfly of love and compassion that will change the hearts and minds of everyone, so we won't need to resist. We won't need to resist. Let me tell you, looking at the future that I'm going to be living, if the destruction isn't stopped now, that's not good enough for me. And that's not good enough for my friends. People who say the resistance won't work, and it can't work, they're forgetting about the Irish nationalists. They're forgetting about the suffragettes. They're forgetting about the abolitionists. They're not thinking about the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta. It's the movement made up of half-starved, poverty-stricken villagers who have utilized bold, nonviolent community-building efforts with underground militant resistance to reduce oil production in the Niger Delta by 40%. That's almost half. So don't tell me that resistance doesn't work, because it does, and it has, and it can. And here's the thing. If it were fascists from another country, or if robots from another world came down, and if it were they who invaded, if it were they who were deforesting, if it were they who were contaminating every stream with carcinogens, if they were putting the most toxic chemical known to science in every mother's breast milk, if it were they who were traumatizing people into PTSD and depression and suicide, if it were they who were damming rivers and killing salmon, if it were they who were robbing the young people of their future, and all of us of our humanity and our intelligence, we would know what to do. We would organize our community and stop them using any means necessary. But since from a very young age, we've pledged allegiance to the flag, we've become really stupid. So we recycle. We ride our bikes. We buy compact fluorescents. We hold signs and we sign petitions. We are the primary beneficiaries of this global system of exploitation. This is all for us. If we had 1%, just 1% of the courage that the Irish nationalists had, that the abolitionists had, we could be equally effective, if not more so. We have so much more in terms of resources than they had. And the most we can come up with is compost piles and protest. The world is being murdered, and environmentalists somehow think that riding our bikes is some sort of answer. I think one of the first things we need to do is recognize that we do not live in a democracy. The government is now by, of, and for the corporations. We cannot vote with our dollar. The corporation will outspend us. We cannot sway the populace through the media. The corporations control the overwhelming majority of what people are reading and seeing. We need organized political resistance. Systems of power need to be named and then dismantled systematically. This will require joint action and creativity. Lots of creativity. Persistent creativity. And we have to remember that only 2% of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, ever picked up arms. The other 98% were doing support work. And the same goes for the abolitionists. Harriet Tubman carried a gun, but she worked closely with the quilt makers. And the pacifist Quakers were the ones to run safe houses to support escaping slaves. You see, we need that sort of culture, that underground railroad, if we're going to dismantle systems of oppressive power, if we're going to stop industrial civilization from killing the planet. We need a transition movement. We need people working on rape crisis hotlines. We need people restoring salmon streams. We need people revoking the rights of corporations through legal channels. Most importantly, we need to make our own rules. Before effective coordinated efforts can happen, we need an above-ground culture that will normalize resistance, that will normalize militancy, and that will normalize the militants themselves, the brave militants. We need to give loyalty and material support to those people who are willing and waiting to do the necessary work of dismantling. To do that, we will need to work together. Thank you very much.
panelists come forward, we can move the tables up. So we're going to have until 1:30, it's about 35 minutes for questions and answers. And I want to say two things. One is the views expressed here are not necessarily the views of any of the groups that are represented here today. So the views you hear today are just the ideas of the panelists. And the most important thing that I want to point out is what we call security culture. And what that means is please, this goes for both the panelists and the audience, please do not make any references to any specific acts that are illegal. Is that an agreement we can all live with? Yes. Can you say yes? Yes. So we'll begin by each panelist giving their age and what they're studying. You want to start, Cameron?
Yeah. My name is Cameron Murphy. I'm 21 and I'm studying sociology up at Western.
My name is Kendall Hardy. I'm 20 and I'm studying cultural anthropology at Western.
My name is Dylan Thompson. I'm 21 years old. I'm taking a year off of school right now to pursue activism full-time.
My name is McKenna Hendrickson. I'm 21 and I'm completing a degree through Fairhaven College that focuses on ecological wellness.
My name is Max Wilbert. I'm 21, and I'm designing a major at Huxley College called Environmental Justice Advocacy.
My name is Thea, and I'm 19. I study English at Western.
So if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you.
I guess for anybody with from what you said, I gather that you are pro, I guess, kicking the industrial machine over rather than waiting for it to expire by itself. And what would you say as a group to the idea that doing that destroys the infrastructure, which is unsustainably supporting a lot of life right now, by making the decision to basically pushing the switch, that you're also without the infrastructure that people are going to die. What do you say about that? How do you contextualize that in the greater scheme of civilization collapse?
Could you please summarize and repeat the question?
So what I hear you saying is that if we're accelerating this collapse of industrial civilization as we know it, all the people in hospitals, all the people relying on Western medicine and industrial civilization, and a lot of people are going to lose their infrastructure and lose their lives. This is true. This is very true. There's going to be death. There's going to be a lot of it. And what I always like to remind myself of, because this is something that is also really hard for me, is that it's already happening all over the world, every day. Like Dylan was saying, 120 species, compared to one, which is ultimately humans. And we are different from all those species in one way, and that is that we're the only ones causing that mass destruction on that level. And personally, I have a couple of family members who are strictly diabetic and rely completely on insulin. And, it scares me and it's sad and it's going to hurt a lot. But ultimately, if I can stop the destruction and the perpetuation of violence of all the other living systems on the planet, that's a sacrifice that personally I'm willing to make.
And I'd just like to add to that. With civilization's collapse, more life will benefit than not. And that includes human life as well. There are former granaries in India that now export dog food and tulips to Europe, and the people around those granaries are starving. There are semiconductor factories that are diverting water for their industry, and the people around those factories are dying of thirst. You take out the industrial infrastructure, people will be able to regain control of their resources. And then, like Thea mentioned, the non-human life that is being extirpated. Chernobyl. The wolves are coming back to Chernobyl. Life is coming back to Chernobyl, which was a nuclear leak site. And there are dead zones in the oceans where there are no life. We are consistently perpetuating areas that are worse than a nuclear leak right now because of industrial civilization.
Also, if we don't do anything now, I know that by scientific evidence, the salmon population in Whatcom County
will probably be extinct. And that means something to me. That means that it's really urgent and things need to happen now. If the salmon population goes extinct, they're a keystone species. A lot of other populations are going to ultimately be destroyed because of that.
Pointing to me? Oh.
Somebody over there, Heather. Go ahead.
Me, go ahead. Or
Why don't you go first?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in an issue that can involve some immediate, concrete action right here in Washington. It's urgently needed. And it's the industrialization of hemp that was made illegal by Monsanto in cooperation with others like the pharmaceuticals and the oil companies and all that, because they didn't like the competition made from a plant that they were now making from petroleum, paper, plastic, fiber, cloth, sails, all of that. And many states are now making it legal, and I don't see any research anywhere that I can find showing me that Washington is having any pending legislation to legalize industrial hemp. I know people are working on legalizing medical marijuana, and that's great, and it'll really help a lot of people with their health. But it's extremely important that we create jobs. And growing hemp would create a lot of jobs. I've been talking to people in Germany that have developed a perfect way for making plastic out of hemp. That would create a lot of jobs. Of course, you can make paper out of it, cloth out of it. There's people that can sell cloth right here in Bellingham, but they can't get it unless they get it from China. And there are processes now that we can. We'd be able to create new industries. We could probably get angel investors that would help to pay and grants to nonprofits.
Excuse me, do you have a question for the panel?
Yes. Do you know anything that is being done in this, and what are your ideas about how we can make this into an avenue of concrete action immediately?
I can respond to that. I believe, and I think everyone on this panel believes, that industrial production of anything, be it hemp, plastic, toys, cars, medicines, is unsustainable.
Well,
And it's destructive.
I don't mean a giant big factory. I mean small, localized people.
She's saying fiber versus wheat.
So I guess really you're saying, should we look to that as a solution, is what you're saying. A solution to some of our problems. I think my perspective is that the world is being killed right now. It's like our house is on fire. The earth is burning. And yes, it's important to have alternative ways of life. It's important to build a new house that's sustainable. But our house is burning, and nobody's putting it out right now. The burning is going on. It's speeding up. The fire is spreading. Every day, more forest is cut down. I think between 11 and 22 million trees are cut down every day. Runaway global warming is a possibility that we face unless greenhouse gas emissions start to go down within 5 years. 5 years.
And part of that is
So-
from burning exposure.
Can we have another question? Raise your hand high if you have one. Go ahead.
This one's kind of largely hypothetical, but I guess I'm just wondering, say that, yes, it is successfully dismantled and everything, and one of the large problems, I guess, is just, that we kind of think that we're the one species, like, we're really, anthropocentric, and we're the one that has a right, like, everyone must live, let's save this preemie baby, like, lots of medical equipment, and so on, and, I would also, it would be hard for me to tell someone, no, but how do you, like, do any of you in your discussion groups maybe talk about, or what would be a way to end later when we return back to some, like, returning to the earth type lifestyle of talking about and how getting away from that kind of, like, everyone must live and extend life for as long as possible, and, like, kind of end this fear of death that we have. So I think that's one of the really big things of why our population has exploded so much.
think a lot of that can come from the encouragement of the understanding of the cyclical nature of any process, name a process, with the exception of the linear trajectory of industrial culture. And so through the likely necessity of direct participation in every aspect of one's life, from food production to healing to transportation, everything, the understanding of one's place within a system that includes not only production, consumption, but decomposition and the recycling of nutrients.